Hi, and welcome to another edition of We Review Races with Billy and Sam. This time we are in Springfield, Illinois, in the land of Lincoln, and we have just finished the Route 66 half. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the race.
So we'll just do transition and all that good stuff first,
Sure.
or check-in and transition. So check it. So this race was really pretty unusual in that the COVID protocols much more stringent than any race that we've done recently.
Yeah, we are at the end of July, and the Delta variant is kicking back up, and so
You think that's what it was?
I think that's what's going on.
Okay.
But he did say he had to fight. He's been fighting for weeks to be able to put on the race, and that was kind of pre-Delta variant. So it could be either. But
So for check-in, you had to put a mask on to go inside the building. You had your name on a list. They gave you. It was kind of interesting. They gave you a bag of stuff, which we'll go over. The sticker for your bike was a handwritten mailing label. Never had that before, but I mean, it was
I've had no stickers, and I've had pre-printed stickers, but I've never had handwritten stickers.
You got a regular race bib, which was a pre-printed race bib. And was there any? I mean, there wasn't like a helmet sticker and
Just
nothing
the one
else. Yeah,
green.
So the bag of stuff. What you got in the bag? So you got this shirt, and it's a cotton shirt, and we've given people a hard time about doing cotton shirts before. However,
It's a local race, but let's point out our names are on this shirt. And I love it most because my name's way up here and Billy's way down here.
I don't know how that worked. We have the same last name. How we're not alphabetical? But it's a local race. This was the entire field for the half iron. So everybody whose name is on here was in the half iron, and it was a small field. But they gave you some bike socks. So have we ever gotten socks before?
We have had races that claim they gave socks before. This is the first time we've actually received socks.
So I forgive you for the cotton shirt because we got bike socks. So that was pretty cool. And you got a decent water bottle, and this is going to be important because, like I said, with the COVID protocols, we'll go over it in each thing. But there were a lot of COVID protocols where you needed a water bottle. I didn't actually use this one because I had one, but it's
the specialized top.
Yeah, I mean for a water bottle. Usually when you get these and they're throwaways or whatever, but this is a pretty good one. We'll use this.
I like it.
I mean, it's got Hammer on it, plus it has their Try Harder logo. But that's good. And then you also they gave you a gel, and she actually had a box of gels. You could have pulled out as many of these as you wanted in the Fizz tab. We don't use Hammer stuff, so that'll probably end up being donated to somebody, but that was a pretty decent swag. I mean,
this is a local race, so you don't expect as much because you're not charged. You're half the price of Ironman and Challenge. So,
transit. So that was kind of all a check in. We checked in on Friday. You could have checked in on Saturday. The race was Saturday, so you could have checked in the morning of the race. You brought your bike the morning of the race. They said they did not have security, so that you couldn't put your bike out the night before, which is fine because it rained the night before.
Yeah.
It rained for the race, but still. So that was fine. The racks were short, which was really kind of strange.
They had bent the legs down to the racks. I don't know if we have a picture of that or not, but I had to lean my bike over to get it up or under. I'm a large frame. Billy was a medium frame, and you could barely get yours up under.
I had to lean it over to get it out. Yeah. But 4 racks per rack, and that was nice.
Yeah.
You could set your stuff up at your rack, and there was, like I said, it wasn't a big race. They did do a half iron, an Olympic, and a sprint all at the same day. They were all on the course at the same time, but they started the half first, they started the Olympic second, and the sprint third, which is a good.
It's clever.
If you're going to do 3 races, that's the way to do it. You use the same course, you get the half iron people out of the swim and onto the bike, and then because they're going to be on the bike the longest, and then you get the Olympic people onto the bike because they're going to be on the next longest, and then the sprint people. And I'm assuming the sprint people were the first people on the run course. The Olympic people were probably the second people on the run course, and then we were on the run course. So it kind of compacts it all into that's how you do it in a day, and that was set up, pretty well, color coded for each. So you knew where to turn, where your route was based on the color. So our color for the half was green, the Olympic was orange, and the sprint was yellow. So that was all planned out pretty well. You can tell they'd done this before. They had the system down.
Yeah.
Other than that transition, you got to choose your own bike spot. There was, rack spot. The bike in and bike out was at the exact same place, and so the spot closest to that would have been the preferred spot. But I'm gonna tell you that it's such a small race that
it didn't really matter. Yeah. I think there were only 5 or 6 rows of half iron.
Yeah, it wasn't. My first transition, and I went slow with like 2 minutes and something. I never have a 2 minute and something transition. And that was me taking my time.
Nice.
It was. Anything else you want to add about transition or check-in?
Interesting notes. It was not a closed transition. They had some spectators in there. They had some gaps in the fences.
Yeah. And during the race, when I got to the run, people were taking their bikes out of transition.
Yes.
And they had helpers helping gather their stuff or whatever. Never
did not delay
anything. Me or anything. So it didn't bother me.
It was
just
really
different.
interesting. So that was certainly of note. The transition and swim start, and of course then swim finish, all in the same area, so that wasn't a big deal. Check-in, we went one way, they went the other. You did not get your timing chip until morning of, but they made that really smooth, and then that's everything I know.
All right, well, let's move on to the swim. Tell us about the swim.
So swim's really interesting. This is a one loop swim. You went up under the bridge. Basically, all they did was one row of buoys, and you just kept them to your left the entire time. So, once again, there were we figured around 100 people doing this race. No problems. It
was out and back. So you kept them on your left. You went to the end. Then you came back, and then when you came back past the start point,
so it kind of made a triangle.
And it was really interesting to me because I figured when I got to the turnaround you'd be halfway, and you were not halfway, and it was not even close to halfway, and I was like, uh-oh, is this going to be long enough? Is it going to count for us? We've asked, and it was certified as 1.2, but since you went all the way past the starting point and then came back in to another dock, they weren't but 20 yards from each other, but you went past and then came back, and so it ended up the distance was correct.
It was right. I'd call it minimal visibility. It's lake water. I could not see my hand when it was fully extended.
It was not clear.
Was
it muddy? Did our suits get muddy?
No, it was not nearly as bad as the other one. Okay. So not clear, but fine. Coming out of the swim, it was very slick.
They're gonna have to fix that.
He said they swept it the day before, that didn't seem to matter.
So Sam was crawling coming out. Literally hands and knees crawling to get out. They had they had talked about in the morning briefing or whatever that they were going to put out rubber mats. Well, the rubber mats they put out were on the sides. And the reason they did that, because they said, I guess normally they have a handrail in the middle, but since it was COVID protocols, then they couldn't have the handrail for whatever reason. And so since the mats were on the side, everybody's going to swim towards the center of that boat ramp.
That's exactly right.
And I got there, and the guy was yelling at me, go left or right or whatever.
Yeah, they didn't yell at me.
And
I had to find that out.
I'm skating. I think Sydney has some video of all of this, but I'm sliding around trying to find, literally sliding around trying to find the rubber mat.
Yeah.
And so I think they'll fix that for now. I mean, they have to fix that for next year. I mean, they saw that it was a problem.
It was
They
certainly
just
an
either
issue.
need more rubber mats or deeper into the water or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was.
Yes,
That was.
I started
that
to
was
stand up when it was waist high, and that was a mistake. So I just came back down, found the mat, and then just called out. The guy was giving me his hand. I didn't need it because I had a grip on the mat at that point. But so their COVID protocols were the volunteers weren't supposed to touch us, but
they figured it out.
Yeah,
It was-
they were trying to help as much as they could.
And I mean, it was equal for everybody, so it didn't really change the people's time. I mean, didn't change their standing or whatever.
No, so they had you 2 at a time every 6 seconds. It looks like the people at the beginning of the race, they had them already over the line, so their time had started by the time they jumped in the water, because the timing chip was, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet back.
Okay, so we're standing in line in front. This is something to note. We're standing in line, and you think that your time starts when you cross that timing chip. It did not.
Really?
No, it started when you got close enough to the timing mat that it picked up your thing, because my watch time and my actual time was different, and I know that I had when I crossed that mat to start off with, I hit it, and when I crossed the mat coming across the finish line, it was even. I mean, I hit it afterwards, and I was still like 12 seconds difference. So I mean, just know that don't stand there and catch your breath or whatever. You just, once it's your turn, go. And that was handled fine. I mean, 2 every 6 seconds, you had to run down the dock, and it wasn't far. It wasn't.
No.
I mean, the Chattanooga deal, we didn't like that at all.
Forever, and they kept you in line.
Yeah,
by the time we got there, they had corrected it. So by the time that you physically crossed the timing mat, there was nobody in front of you to the water.
Yeah, that was much better.
It was maybe 5-7 steps.
And everybody had the same thing. And that's kind of like when you come out of the water, you have to run up a ramp or whatever to get to the timing chip to start transition. So that's fine. I mean, I think the way they did that was fine.
Buoys were a little screwy. They are always a little screwy when they have multiple races, because the different colors mean different things. Hey,
Right.
You need to go to here. You need to go to here. I mean, since we were all I had to do was look at the furthest buoy, so that didn't matter. You just were swimming along the line until you ran out of buoys, and you cut left and then turned around.
Yeah, I didn't. There was opportunity for that to be pretty confusing, and that wasn't as confusing as it could have been. I think they did a good job with that. I was going to give them a hard time because the buoys weren't numbered, and then I looked at the end and they were numbered.
They were all numbered.
So
Just didn't see them.
Yeah, I never paid attention to it. It was a smaller number towards the top, but still, if you knew what to look for, you could have known.
Find it.
And I'm not sure they were equal distance apart. I mean, certainly the ones at the end, there were like 6 or 7 at the very end. But whatever, they were numbered, so you could see. If you looked at it the day before or the morning of, you could have known where you were at.
So also had mats from the top of the boat ramp.
The carpet.
Yeah, so they had physical carpet all the way to the entrance of transition, which was fantastic.
That, yeah.
That's that little attention to detail is showing how much you care about the racers, and we really appreciate that.
All right, move on to the bike.
So on to the bike.
So we're going to go over the bike course, but what we need to talk about is the weather, and because it made a big difference. I mean, and it rained on us, and I mean when I say rained, it rained. It was. I only heard thunder one time, and it was towards the very end. So it was just rain. It wasn't really thunderstorms.
It wasn't sideways. It was just a rain.
It was just rain, and it was cold. My feet ended up going numb. It took me 2 miles into the run before I felt my feet again. But it was just rain. I mean, we're in July, and it was cold.
It was cold.
And so anyway, so on the bike, it was a 2-loop course. You went out kind of a string. It was a pretty long.
I'm gonna call it a T.
It may have been more of a P because you kind of did you came out and you did the reverse P and then came back down that street. But either way, it was a long straight, and then you went around a circle and then you came back.
But then you passed it and went down the other way and then did a U-turn and came back. Yeah,
but you only did one U-turn.
Yes, there was only one U-turn.
And so they had by doing it that way, they had the mileage dead on. I mean, that was ready. Yeah, and they had talked about that. So the roads themselves were gravelly, and I mean, I'm talking the little tiny gravelly type stuff. And they said that they had spent all week cleaning the roads. So I'm assuming they went out there with blowers or whatever to blow the gravel off the road. And they didn't get all of it. There were some areas where it was still kind of gravelly and sandy, but I think they did as best a job as they probably could. The roads themselves were not great. It was kind of hard to tell how good they were because they were wet and there were puddles, and so you're trying to avoid the puddles. And I'll tell you, I mean, they had to have been worse than last week because my bike was 10 minutes. So the elevation gain was similar to last week.
This was 700 or 800 was what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, and that's what the other one was last week or whatever. They called it flat, but I mean, I would have called it more rolling. And this kind of the same deal. I like that elevation change. I mean, that to me that's better than 200.
Yeah,
because it kind of gives you some difference or whatever. You can change gears. You're just not sitting there in one gear the whole time. But I used more power, 5 watts more power, and my bike was 10 minutes slower. So, I mean, the only thing that you can attribute it to the rain, and then certainly the rain would have something to do with it, but it wasn't windy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it had to have been the roads. I mean, would you agree?
Those roads are.
I mean, they
tough.
were porous, not a ton of potholes.
No.
So you didn't have to weave just porous.
There could
roads.
have been a ton of potholes.
Yeah, but you just avoided them because you could see standing water, and you didn't want to go through the standing water.
Find out the hard way.
So the 2-loop course was good for us because we don't drive the course anymore. So you did the first loop and you knew what the second loop was going to be. There was one hill that was steep. It was not long. It was a short, steep hill. All the other hills were just kind of rolling, and I liked the bike course. You went through cornfields. I mean, the whole thing was basically cornfields.
Farm, yeah.
Super rural. I mean, you're not going through the city of Springfield at all. This is kind of on the outskirts of Springfield, and I mean, I don't know any other way to put it. I mean, that's all I saw was corn. I mean, there's corn everywhere.
Soy.
Was there some soy?
There's some soy in there.
The drivers were courteous. I didn't have anybody. I mean, there weren't very many. It wasn't a closed course. I think it was open course, most of it. You got anything to add on the bike?
So supposedly it was closed course, but allowed
local resident traffic,
like people that lived there to get.
That's
to
the
their
only
houses.
people that would go on those roads. Those roads don't go anywhere.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
that's where I was going to go with it.
Okay.
So there was not a lot of traffic. It didn't feel bad, and same thing. They were very courteous. Didn't have any issues with that. The only marking, the primary marking, was the duct tape on the ground. So if you were not paying attention to that, there were a couple of turns that didn't have anybody. So volunteers were a little sparse. Major turns had a police officer and a volunteer. A few minor turns had a sandwich board.
That's exactly what it was. Sandwich board sign that said half, and
with
had
an arrow.
And
then occasionally you only had the duct tape. So just be aware of that. You have to pay attention. Since it's a small race, you can't really rely on looking for people, right? With an Ironman or anybody else, I can just look and see where everybody else is going, and we're going to go that way. Here, there were a few stretches where I was on the road with nobody, or I was on the road and there's nobody in front of me. There's people.
They were following you.
Yeah,
you were leading them down the wrong path.
I was worried there were a couple of turns in there that I asked. So I was, hey, am I going the right way? Pay attention to that.
So the aid stations. Let's talk about I think that they had changed this because of COVID. I think that normally it's not like this, but there was one aid station. Now, to be fair, you passed that aid station 4 times. I didn't realize that you passed it 4 times until the second loop. The first time I noticed it as an aid station was at mile 21 and a half. And then the second time you hit it was mile 43.
Yeah.
But he was it was there was only 1 or 2 guys.
There was one guy there the entire time.
And he was handing out waters if you wanted them, but it was just water. That was it. And they had said in the briefing, "Hey,
you're on your own.
Bring your own stuff." So I'm thinking that that's just a COVID thing. But the aid station was at that sharp right hand turn. He was holding his flag telling you to turn. He was not handing you water, but I bet you could have gotten the water if you wanted it.
So I in fact did. So let's call it a P, and he's at the bottom of the top P. So you went around that circle and came back and hit him again on the down leg. And as you were hitting him again, he was offering water. On the way out, he was not. But when we were coming back up that P for the second time, I needed water, so I had to pull over and I had to get him to take it for me. Hey, water, water, water. That wasn't enough. Finally had to stop in front of him, and he hands me a water. And I had stuck the old. They were
no littering.
The littering. They were very clear on that. That they did not want littering. We'll come back around to race officials, but. So he had grabbed it and threw it away, and that was very nice. So he was very helpful when he understood what you wanted. But once again, COVID and rain, I don't, this information may or not be helpful. So know where that aid station is helpful. That you hit it 4 times would be fantastic. That would be one of the most aid stations we've had on the race.
Three is usually what you get
that we've had. So kudos for that, but it didn't quite pull off as intended. I don't think.
Yeah. We hadn't been given scores.
Oh yeah. We'll have to come back to scores.
So we'll do scores at the very end.
That's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're biking. Roads are rough. You're out in the middle of nowhere, and I saw the SAG truck, the bike support.
The Range Rover.
Yeah.
With the orange windshield wipers. That's how you knew it was him, because he had the orange windshield wipers.
So I saw him a couple of times, but I never saw a race official.
I'm pretty sure the silver Toyota that kept driving around with the hazard lights on was the race official.
I thought that was another bike.
Nah, I'm pretty sure that was the official, because I think there was the black Range Rover was the only bike support, and then the it was like a Tundra or whatever it was. Anyway, he was riding around with hazard lights on, and so I felt like he was the official. I don't know that, but I mean, we didn't see anybody on motorcycles for sure.
No.
I mean, there wasn't a single person on a motorcycle. I don't blame you. I mean, it's raining. Why would you even want to be on a motorcycle?
Yeah, I guess you really couldn't there. But there were not timing mats anywhere on that bike course. You got out on the bike and you came in on the bike. And
there were no timing mats on the run either, bro. If your family's not tracking you, they'll know when they'll know 15 minutes after you finish, because they'll post your race time or whatever. But that's it. There's no tracking.
So yes, absolutely no tracking, no splits. So that was a little bit interesting. But so you've got to pay attention to your watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I
So for me, the splits were really pretty even. This is similar to last week too.
Yeah.
But I don't think I had any 5 mile splits that were less than 14 minutes and 30 seconds. And I don't think I had any 5 mile splits that were over 5 minutes and maybe 30 or 40 seconds. So they were all in that kind of, so it was a pretty equal.
Nice.
And I mean, since I did 5 more watts, I felt like I was trying. I did not hit 20 last week. I was like 20.7 or something. I was trying to hit 20 this week. I catch up to Sam and I'm like, well, hey, how fast you want to go? And he's like, well, I want to do 20. And I was like, all right, well, let's do 20. And For whatever reason, I couldn't. I mean, I wasn't going to blow it out.
Yeah.
But the effort that I was given was a bigger effort than last week. Still couldn't hit it. So
Yeah, the race director said today was several people came up and told him that it was a PR race or PR on this course for them, that the bike course PR. So it being cooler must have been very helpful.
So for us, it was cool in the low 70s. But last year, somebody was telling us the heat index was 104. So
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's just weather. And I mean, it is July. We figured it'd be a lot hotter
Yes.
than what it is. But
Yes.
keep that in mind.
So
All right, move on to the run.
on to the run. So you came back in on the bike, and we're back out. We start running. You run up out of transition again, and you cross that bridge. So this run, they called it flat, and I'm not going to call it flat.
I think it was like 250 feet of gain or something like that, and maybe that's a flat.
I think this was a deceptively difficult course. There's a lot of the roads that you ran on were banked frequently, and
Which is awesome for the bike.
I'm
Not
going to
so
call
awesome
it
for the run.
severely.
Yeah.
And so you're running, but you're not running on even tread. So it's not really flat to me because
Yeah.
you're dealing with that. Roads that are there. Same thing. This is kind of a
Two-loop course.
two-loop course that there was a
pretty much a
triangle in the
T,
middle.
right?
Yeah, this one was a T. You went up and to the top, came down, turned around, went back up to the top, and then you came back the stem of the T. No real surprises of note, and it was raining, so I don't know
Yeah, so
how
the
to-
COVID protocols, they were handing out like little water bottles, they call it, was it 9-ounce water bottles
Yeah.
or something. I ended up kind of liking that because you could
Take it and run.
you could take it and run. You didn't have to stop and get rid of your trash right there. You could just wait till you get to the next one. I mean, I think for today there were plenty of aid stations. I don't know if that would have been enough if it was hot or not. I don't even know if they would have had more if it wasn't COVID deal.
Yeah.
But the layout of the run course was good. It was mostly through a neighborhood type area,
Yes, along the lake.
residential area. There was traffic. It was an open course.
That was definitely an open course.
And there was some people were
Just didn't know what was going on, is what it looked like. to me.
didn't understand how to make it work with runners because you had runners on both sides of the roads,
Yeah.
right? Since it was an out and back course, you had runners on both sides. So anyway, I liked the run. It was a fast run for me because it was cold. It was raining, but it was cold, and so for whatever reason, I can run fast in the cold, even if it's raining.
Good for you.
I think it was adequately staffed. I think the course. I mean, I don't know that you could have picked a better road. Just be aware that that's because the roads are slanted, so you're not running on even stuff. I agree with you.
The road for the run was far better road surface than we encountered on the bike.
Yeah, that is true.
So
Yeah, it was good.
they picked a very nice road. We never had any gravel. And I don't know that you would have had slip and falls, but I never had an issue with that.
There was one porta potty on the run course, and now this is one porta potty for the half, which was 100 people or 200
Yeah.
people, whatever it was. It was a low number of people, so you'd be like, all right, well, one's fine. But it was the same one for the Olympic and the sprint too, and I think they were saying there were 400 people total.
Yeah.
I never saw a line for it. I never saw it back up.
I used
or
it,
whatever.
and it was open. So
But I did see people peeing in the woods.
yes, yeah.
So
happens.
I mean, you pass this porta potty 4 times.
But
Really, kind of. You don't really see it the first time you pass it, but the other 3, it's there. But I mean, a lot of times you see porta potties at every aid station, and this was just the one on the course.
same road marking as was on the bike, and so you had a turnaround for the sprint, but it was very clearly marked, and they had a volunteer there, and then of course the same thing for the Olympic. So they had done a good job with that. The buckets,
That was
the
kind of
numbers-
creative.
Yeah, so they had these green buckets,
5-gallon buckets.
with your mile marker on there, and then the same thing they had that matched the duct tape. So they did a really nice job of keeping everything consistent. So yellow duct tape for the sprint, yellow buckets for the sprint, yellow or orange, and green, and for us it was green. A few times the buckets were not in the right spot.
So the dude that I think when he was pulling the 9 and the 6 off, he got those mixed up or something.
Yeah.
He put them in the wrong spot. So
Yeah, and then the 11 was like further down. The duct tape on the ground matched up with my watch, so I didn't have any concerns. But yeah, some of those buckets were just what in the. But you could use the buckets for your garbage. They gave us the same spiel. Hey, make sure you don't litter if you like this race.
it's hard to get good help now.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
I'm thinking that the buckets are all upside down and you're peeling them up one at a time.
Yeah.
And so the 6 and the 9 are
Kinda
upside down, right?
like
And
it
so
could be.
the 6 looks like a 9 and the 9 looks like a 6.
There's no
That was
telling.
my theory on it, but whatever.
Right.
It gave me something to think about. It was kind of humorous.
Yeah, and it matched up with my watch, so you
Yeah.
know that when you hit it and it was weird, you just ignored it. But the same thing, you could use the buckets as trash, so there was you could throw your gels and your bottles into it. So every mile you had the buckets that you could throw trash in, plus you had an aid station.
Yeah, they had plenty of trash receptacles.
That
And
part was
it
good.
looked like people were. I mean, I didn't see trash all over
Fairly
the
recyclable.
road.
Yeah,
so
it was
that
really interesting.
I mean, normally you see stuff everywhere, and this
Yeah,
one you didn't.
yeah.
All right, so finish line.
Finish line. So came over the bridge, and you're crossing into the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. There weren't a ton of spectators. I mean, it's a small race, and the sprint and Olympic had already cleared out.
Yeah.
So
And
the
it's
finish
raining.
line was
Well,
the regular blow up.
Sun had come out, but it had been raining all day, so
Yeah.
we did not have many spectators, but I don't know
Oh, and we got a medal.
what to expect.
And so this is the finish medal. It was handed to us just like this. So I'm assuming that was COVID too. I don't know. Sometimes they put them around your neck, but they just gave it to you. I mean, it's a fine medal. It's not. This is not the best medal we've ever received. It's not the worst either. So it's fine.
Reasonably big. The attachment point, I generally like to see that they incorporate it into the metal so it looks nicer than this. They paid for the nice silk or whatever
And it
this
says
stuff is.
half instead of like remember White Mountains that had
Yeah, all
three.
of them on it.
This one's
Only
just
with
that one. So
that.
that's nice. We do appreciate that.
So yeah, it was fine. Yeah, once again, you're at a local race. You're paying half the price of the big boys. You kind of expect that some of those niceties or those luxuries are not included.
All right. So quickly, let's go over scores.
Okay.
So transition and check-in.
I mean, I gotta give it like a 6. They did a great job.
I'm gonna give it a little bit less. I'm gonna give it a 5. The short racks in transition. Maybe I'll give it a 5.5 because the socks. You didn't get a ton of swag, but you got more than what you get at most local races.
Yeah.
So better than what you would expect. So I'll stick with 5.5 for
Okay.
transition and check-in.
Okay, so for the swim.
For the swim, okay, so I liked the swim. The course layout was fine, and I think they did a fine job with the buoys. Sometimes you'll have a bunch of the same color, and the swim caps that you wore were the same color of the race that you were in. So if you weren't paying attention, you see somebody's green swim cap, and you might not see that because there's a green buoy that you were trying to swim to too. But I think that's how they keep people on track. So
Yeah.
I think that was perfect that they did that. You got to take off for the ramp, and I mean,
Yes.
I understand that wasn't probably their fault, and I'm sure they'll probably change that for next year. But I mean, take off a full point for the ramp, 6.
Yes.
Give it a 6.
Yeah, that was the exact same thing I was. So yes, it gets a 6 for me too.
All right, so the bike.
Bike. I don't know how to judge this because of the rain.
Yeah.
So that part's a little tough. I'm still gonna give it a 5.5. Scenery not changing. I'm gonna take off 4. I mean, it kind of is what it is. And open course and the roads. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'll do 5.5 too. The aid station thing was kind of weird. I liked the course, and the fact that they only had the one U-turn was kind of nice.
Yeah.
So the way they laid that out, the roads were not great, and I'm sure they're just working with what they've got. They were not the worst roads we've ever been on.
No.
By far, they're not the worst.
And they had swept. It looks like they had focused their time on the corners where you were turning, because I did not find any gravel at any of those corners.
Oh, you didn't cut your corners fast enough then.
Well, so kudos to cleaning the slow part of the corner.
Which is where you probably should have been turning anyway. All right, so what we decide on that?
5.5.
5.5. All right, so now we're on the run.
On the run.
I mean, I enjoyed the run. The roads were good. The fact that you had to get, a lot of that stuff was COVID. I'm going to give it a 6.5. I'm not real sure what they could have meant. They probably could have put more porta potties out to keep people from peeing in the woods. But that's really, the roads are slanted, but they didn't have anything to do with that. They did choose the course. But that's a good course. You're limited in where you can go from there, and I think they chose a good course. I'm giving it a solid 6.5.
All right, that's fair enough. I'm going to give it a 6.
Okay.
I'm going to take off for the slant because that just drives me crazy. Same thing, the aid stations were only.
It was only water. They
water.
did have the heat stuff too. We didn't.
They were only manned though by 2 volunteers or 1 volunteer.
Weren't handing you anything, which they told us that in the beginning.
Yeah. So they had warned us about it, but just not super involved on the volunteers. And then of course, I'm running down one of the streets. There's no arrows coming back this way, and this guy, the runner with a badge, is coming this way, and I'm trying to figure out if I'm in the wrong place or he is. So same thing, a little bit of extra volunteers, making sure we're going the right way, or signs. I understand volunteers are kind of tough to come by, but give me a little bit extra. Duct tape would have been fine. Just showing me the way,
pointing the arrow this way, like, hey, you're on the right course.
So they were at every turn, and there were generally 2 or 3 of them at every turn, but there were no reinforcement arrows
later on down the course.
So,
all right, finish line medal, I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this a 3.
Okay, you expect a better medal?
There was no finish line food. There was no finish line whatnot. Shortly after I crossed, and to be fair, I took a little over 6 hours, so I'm pretty late in the race. They were working on taking down the finish line accessories. I really hate to see that. I understand, and everybody wants to go home, and I don't know how many people were behind me, but at least 20.
So there were some. I saw somebody coming in that was going out. I think the dude that had fallen.
Yeah.
I think he was going to be at least 8.5, if not more. But yeah.
So I hate that, man. Come on, just leave it up. This is the celebration of what you did. Of course, there's not many spectators. That hurts. But you finished, and here's your medal. Take your tag, and there was a bucket of water that you could get a water out of. So it just didn't end well for me. That's the happiest moment of the whole race. A little bit of reinforcement would have gone a long way.
Yeah, similar things for me. I'll give it a 4. Which the reason I'm giving it a 4 is because it's a local race as opposed to a more expensive race. So in a sense, there you get what you pay for. But it was raining, so I'm sure the spectators would have been better if it was raining. I don't know if they would have given out the shirts at the end, because it's a finisher shirt. It says finisher on the back. I don't know how all of that would have worked if it wasn't COVID, and so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
But I'm still giving it a 4, which is that's what would be expected for a local race.
Yes. Okay. All right. So your overall
race. This was a good race.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a. I'll give it a 6. I think we had some scores that were higher than a 6 and a few that were lower. So I'm going to give it a solid 6.
Fair enough. I'm going 5.5.
Okay.
I recommend this race. Nobody that I talked to was out of area. So we were the only people from the South that I talked to. My demographic is the slower people who are willing to talk, so there could have been very fast people. But same thing, you're not qualifying for anything, so there's no real, advantage in racing. But yeah, this was a fun race. I'd certainly recommend it. Please,
they have a lot of experience doing this because there were a lot of issues that they thought through and handled. So it was a well-run race for sure.
I don't think we can speak to the town because it was raining. I did see,
and it wasn't really in Springfield. It was kind of on the outskirts.
Yeah,
so.
I saw one person had a rain shower thing hooked up on their mailbox, and then obviously it's raining, so God was giving us that, whether we wanted it or not. So nobody at the end of the driveways, no stuff. But once again, it's raining and cold. I didn't want to be out there, so not really surprised that nobody else was. No. So we're going to abstain from the town on this one. But I can say the drivers were reasonably courteous on the bike. The run was a little, but once again, you're getting in the 12, 1 o'clock. You're not in the early stuff. So.
Right. But it was a good race. I'd certainly recommend it. It's a well run. I think they did a great job with it.
Yeah, and stay tuned. We'll do our long race review next.